Crashed: How a Decade of Financial Crises Changed the World by Adam Tooze is an expansive and meticulously researched history of the global financial crisis of 2007, 2008 and its aftermath. The book provides a comprehensive analysis of the causes, events, and consequences of the crisis, as well as its broader implications for the world economy and geopolitics. Tooze argues that the crisis was not merely a failure of finance, but also a symptom of deeper structural problems in the global economy, including inequality, overconsumption, and unsustainable patterns of growth. The book begins by setting the stage with a brief overview of the economic boom that preceded the crisis. Fueled by cheap credit, financial innovation, and globalization, the world economy experienced unprecedented growth in the decades leading up to 2007. This growth was particularly pronounced in the United States, where a housing bubble began to form in the early 2000s. As home prices soared, Americans borrowed heavily against their rising home equity, fueling a consumption boom and further inflating the housing market. Meanwhile, the financial sector underwent a period of rapid expansion and deregulation. Banks and other financial institutions began to create and trade increasingly complex financial instruments, such as mortgage-backed securities and credit default swaps. These instruments allowed banks to spread risk across the global financial system and facilitate the flow of capital on an unprecedented scale. However, as Tooze points out, this growth also created new vulnerabilities, as banks became more interconnected and susceptible to systemic risk. The first signs of trouble emerged in 2007 when the housing bubble began to burst. As home prices plummeted, millions of Americans found themselves unable to repay their mortgages, leading to a wave of foreclosures. This, in turn, triggered a liquidity crisis for many financial institutions, as the value of their mortgage-backed securities plummeted and investors lost confidence in the financial system. The crisis quickly spread beyond the housing market, as banks and other financial institutions teetered on the brink of collapse. The U.S. government responded to the crisis with a series of unprecedented interventions, including the creation of the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, and the Federal Reserve's decision to bail out major financial institutions. These measures were designed to stabilize the financial system and prevent a complete meltdown, but they also had significant consequences for the global economy. As Tooze notes, the U.S. government's decision to pump trillions of dollars into the financial system had the effect of weakening the U.S. dollar and driving up commodity prices, leading to inflation and economic instability in many parts of the world. The crisis also exposed deep structural problems in the global economy, particularly with regard to inequality and overconsumption. As Tooze argues, the growth of the financial sector in the decades leading up to the crisis was fueled in part by a desire to maintain consumption levels in the face of stagnant wages and declining manufacturing employment. This reliance on debt-fueled consumption created a fragile economy that was prone to boom and bust cycles. The crisis thus served as a wake-up call, forcing policymakers to confront the need for structural reforms that would address these underlying issues. One of the key reforms advocated by Tooze is a shift away from austerity economics, which he argues has exacerbated inequality and stifled growth in the wake of the crisis. Instead, he proposes a more balanced approach that combines fiscal stimulus with measures to address long-term structural problems, such as education reform, infrastructure investment, and environmental sustainability. The book also examines the geopolitical implications of the crisis, particularly with regard to the role of China and other emerging economies. As the crisis unfolded, China's massive foreign reserves and state-controlled banking system allowed it to weather the storm relatively unscathed. This, in turn, gave China increased influence on the global stage and raised questions about the future of the US-led international order. Tooze argues that the crisis marked a turning point in the global balance of power, as emerging economies like China and India began to assert themselves more forcefully on the world stage. In conclusion, Crashed provides a comprehensive and nuanced analysis of the global financial crisis of 2007 to 2008 and its aftermath. By situating the crisis within the broader context of global economic and geopolitical developments, Tooze offers valuable insights into the forces that shape our world today. The book is essential reading for anyone seeking to understand the complexities of the modern global economy and the challenges that lie ahead.